Hare Krishna. So last Sunday we began a topic that is very important to every one of us, and the topic is of departing gloriously from this world. All of us will have to depart one day, there is no doubt about it. So what is unusual is not that we have to depart, that is usual, but how we depart. We mentioned briefly at the beginning of the lecture last Sunday that a glorious departure meant a departure from this world thinking of Krishna in great devotion. And such a departure is possible only when one has lived one's life gloriously. You cannot die gloriously unless you have lived gloriously. One cannot expect to live sinfully and then die gloriously. That is not possible. So a life lived in surrender, in sacrifice, in devotion, in service to Lord Krishna and his devotees and to the entire world is a life lived gloriously. And when that life will inevitably come to an end, then there will also be a glorious departure from this world. A glorious departure is one, therefore, in which one leaves this material world, leaves the cycle of birth and death forever, never to come back again in this material world, which Lord Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita as being dukkhalayam ashashvatam, an abode of misery and also an abode that is temporary. So the glorious departure indicates that this particular soul has regained his constitutional position in the spiritual world in relationship with Lord Krishna and has gone back there to Vaikuntha, to the spiritual world, to live a life of eternal bliss, eternal happiness, eternal knowledge in the company of the Supreme Lord and his devotees. This should be the final aim and destination for everyone, especially when we have attained to this very rare human form of life. Last Sunday, it was the disappearance day anniversary of a great saint who appeared in South India about 1,000 years ago, whose name was Ramanujacharya. And we began by talking about two people, glorious people, who were related to this glorious personality. One was his guru, Mahapurna, and the other was his disciple, Kuresh. We discussed the circumstances, which were very harsh, under which both Mahapurna and Kuresh were subjected to great physical difficulty, their eyes having been gouged out by the cruel tyrant king Kolatunga, who did not like the devotion to Lord Krishna practiced by the Vaishnavas living there. Mahapurna, being an old man, could not tolerate the misery and the pain, and he departed his body even on the way back from the king's court to Sri Rangam, which was their residence, a holy place where the Lord, Supreme Lord, in the form of Lord Ranganath, resides. And he departed on the way, on the side of the street. From ordinary vision, it would appear to be an inauspicious passing away, because we would like that someone should pass away in a very nice place, in a clean place, in a very protected environment. But a glorious departure doesn't have anything necessarily to do with the external circumstances of your passing away. Mahapurna, the great devotee of Krishna and the guru of Ramanujacharya, by his passing away indicated exactly that for a pure devotee of the Lord, who is always thinking of Lord Krishna, it doesn't matter what the physical location of one's death is. And so he lay on the side of the road in some forested area, and he left his body, he departed. But that was no less glorious a departure. In fact, by such a passing away, he has given hope to millions and millions of those who have succeeded him in future generations. Because if a glorious departure were to mean necessarily that we have to leave our body, that we have to die only in a holy place, then that gives us a sense of hopelessness, that we don't know death will come to us, when it will come, where and how. So how could we prepare ourselves by going to a holy place? And then having gone to a holy place, what if there was some calamity somewhere? What if there was some disturbing element somewhere? So by Mahapurna's example, he has taught us, don't worry. Wherever you may die in this world, so long as you are practicing pure devotional service to Krishna, if you have practiced remembering Krishna with love and devotion, your departure will be glorious. Whether you pass away from this world in London, or in Argentina, or in Japan, or in Vrindavan, it doesn't matter if you are a pure devotee of the Lord. Ramanuja's disciple Quresh, his departure was equally glorious as well. I would like to briefly recapitulate what we had mentioned for the benefit of those who were not here last Sunday, and also to refresh the memories of everyone who were. Quresh was sent by his Guru Ramanuja from Srirangam to Kanchipuram, which is a place where there was another famous temple of Lord Krishna, the Varadaraj temple. And Ramanuja sent him there, that Lord Varadaraj is famous as one who bestows benedictions upon his devotees. So please go and ask him for your sight. As you remember, the king had gouged out their eyes, so he couldn't see physically. So Quresh composed a poem in glorification of the Lord, and the Lord was very pleased. So my dear Quresh, what do you want? And he said, just release me and let me have divine vision of your form in the spiritual world. Which meant he wasn't asking for physical vision. He was asking for that spiritual vision. You see, in history there have been many blind people who were great devotees. Can you name some of them? Surdas was one, yes. Bilva Mangal Thakur. It is said about Bilva Mangal Thakur that even though actually his eyes were also gouged out, but by himself, and that's another story. We won't tell it this time. So Bilva Mangal Thakur later on became blind, but by spiritual vision he was able to see the divine form of the Lord. It's not by physical eyes that we can see the Lord. It's by spiritual eyes, by the eyes of devotion. As Brahma says in the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santah sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achinte gunasvarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Brahma, the creator of this world, prays that, my dear Lord, O Govinda, who are the original person of this world, your pure devotees, those whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of love for you, Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena, they develop eyes of devotion, bhakti vilochana. And with these divine eyes, they constantly see you in the core of their hearts. Yam Sham Sundaram Achintya Gunasvarupam. You, O Sham Sundar, O Krishna, who are endowed with all divine attributes. Santah Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. Such great devotees are always able to see you within the core of their hearts. So Bilva Mangal Thakur was actually able to see Krishna in the divine form, even though he wasn't able to see things with his physical eyes. So Quraysh asked for that divine vision. And the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "So be it, Quraysh, I award you divine vision." When Ramanuja heard about this, he said, "Come, let us go to Varadaraj himself." So he took him to Kanchipurna and said, "Now, Quraysh, you stand in front of Varadaraj. And remember, don't just ask only for divine vision. Ask for physical vision." And then as Quraysh began his poetic compositions in glorification of the Lord, Ramanuja was urgently called away for some work. And when he went there, in that time, Quraysh had finished his entire composition. And then the Lord said, "So Quraysh, what do you want from me?" He said, "I'm an old man and this body is troublesome. Please release me from this mortal coil and give me eternal residence in your kingdom. And yes, please deliver Naluran." Naluran was actually a devotee. He was his disciple who became a traitor, because he was the one who told the cruel king Kolatunga that this is not Ramanuja. This is his disciple Quraysh who has come in disguise as Ramanuja. It was this devotee, so-called devotee, who actually persuaded the king to call Ramanuja in the first place. And here is Quraysh. Just see, so much misery was caused to him and to his guru and to so many devotees because this one person was such a traitor. And what does he do when the Lord asks him for a benediction? He says, "Please deliver him as well. Don't deliver only me, deliver him also." The Lord was pleased. And then at that time Ramanuja came back just as this was getting over, and he understood what had happened. He said, "Quraysh, what have you done? You have transgressed my order. What use will divine vision be to you when you're living in this world? I asked you to ask the Lord for your physical vision, because that will help you to live independently." And then Ramanuja, in a mood of devotion, emotion also, he asked the Lord, "My dear Lord, can't you grant him physical vision? He has sacrificed so much for you." So then the Lord replied, "All right, I will give him physical vision just enough to see me and you." Me meaning the deity. He had the divine vision of the Lord in Vaikuntha. But now he was blessed to see even the deity and his guru. So Ramanuja was satisfied with at least that much. He said, "Yes, my Lord, thank you." And he came away. On another occasion, Quraysh came back to Sri Rangam. And one day he came alone to Sri Ranganath. And Ranganath spoke to him, the deity, the Murti. "Quraysh, it seems you want to tell me something. You have anything to say?" Immediately Quraysh burst out in a wonderful song in glorification of Lord Ranganath. And Ranganath was very pleased. He said, "Ask me for a boon, Quraysh." Quraysh said, my dear Lord, my life is full of boons I have received from you. Unlimitedly you have showered your mercy on me. So what more is left for me to ask you? No, still, for the sake of my consort, Lakshmi Devi, for the sake of my love for your Guru, Ramanuja, you ask me something. So then Quraysh said, "All right, then please give me residence at your lotus feet in the eternal kingdom in Vaikuntha." "Is that all?" Ask for something more. That anyway you're going to get. No, that's all. I can't think of anything. Many times when people come before the Lord, it's not different from going to Tesco or Costco, because they come with a shopping list. My dear Lord, please give me this and this and this. And yes, I forgot. Oh yeah, there's this also, the 20th on the list. But Quraysh couldn't think of anything to ask because he said, you have given me everything. But the Lord was not satisfied with that. So he said, Quraysh, you're not asking for it, but here I am giving you another boon. And that boon is that everyone connected with you will also be delivered and go to Vaikuntha. And word spread fast that the deity had spoken like this. And Ramanuja came to hear of it. When he heard of it, he was sitting with some disciples. He leaped up in the air, even though he was 110 years old at that time. And he started waving his upper cloth, this upper cloth that he was wearing. He started waving it in the air like that. And all his disciples were astonished to see his exuberance, 110 years of age. And they asked him, my dear Gurudev, what has happened? Why is it you are so joyful? He said, the Lord has blessed Quraysh that not only will he go to Vaikuntha, but anyone who has any relation with him will also go, and I also have a relation with him. I am his guru, so that's also some kind of relation. So I will go to Vaikuntha. So he has ensured my glorious departure. He has ensured that I will also go back to the abode of the Supreme Lord. And then eventually, the joy turned into grief when he realized that he would be separated from his dear Quraysh. So he rushed to Quraysh and he chided him. Quraysh, why did you ask such a thing from the Lord without consulting with me? And Quraysh was submissively silent. He didn't answer. So Quraysh, why don't you speak? Why did you ask such a thing where you would leave the Lord like this before me? So Quraysh replied, excuse me. So Quraysh replied, my dear Lord, I wanted to preserve the etiquette. So what do you mean? You're speaking in riddles. So he said, usually when someone goes to Vaikuntha, the eternal spiritual world of the Lord, the Vishnu Dutas, the messengers of Lord Vishnu, they stand there at the gates to welcome their younger brothers and sisters. But that's actually a breach of etiquette, because the younger ones should welcome the older ones. Not that the older ones should welcome the younger ones. So I want to be there before you, so when you come I can welcome you. So Ramanuja then embraced him and said, Quraysh, never have I seen a soul like you. And then he actually initiated him again. Although he declared that Quraysh doesn't need this, but just for the sake of the pleasure of that relationship, I will do it again. And he did it. And then he turned around to Quraysh and said, Quraysh, how could you think of going away like this? You are my life and soul, and I cannot bear to think of separation from you, my son. And you have just gone ahead and asked the Lord to take you away before me? So, can't you be kind upon an old man and take your master with you to Vaikuntha? You'd rather that he is here in the world feeling the cruel pangs of separation from you? And then he paused for a while and he said, okay, I will go to Lord Ranganath. And he started taking a few steps ahead to ask Lord Ranganath to reverse his blessing. But then he stopped and he said, no, how can I have the audacity to go and ask the Lord to change his mind? The Lord's will is what it is supreme. So I should not go and ask the Lord to change his mind. And then he continued to stay there. And then he looked at Quraysh and he said, Quraysh, so will you not consider what is going to happen to us here? So it seems that you have been attracted by the Lord in Vaikuntha, even though the same Lord is here as Ranganath and he possesses every attraction of the same Lord there. It seems that the Lord in Vaikuntha and all his devotees there will now be blessed, or not blessed, but will have the good fortune of having your company. And the Lord here, Lord Ranganath and all of us here, we will be deprived of your company. Anyway, Quraysh, with a heavy heart, I give you permission, my son, go. Go to the eternal realms of Vaikuntha. Go there and rule in peace for eternity. And with this heartfelt blessing and with a heavy heart, Ramanuja departed from there. Quraysh began to follow him. And then Ramanuja forbade him and went on. And then Quraysh called together his family members. He lay on the lap of his favorite devotees and departed from this world. So such is the nature of the departure of great devotees in history. Ramanuja's point was also significant, that there is no difference between the deity and the Lord in Vaikuntha. The deity is every bit as beautiful and as attractive as the Supreme Lord in Vaikuntha. The deity is the Lord. There is no difference. So therefore the devotees become very attached to serving the deities because they don't see the deity simply as a statue. They understand that the deity is directly Lord Krishna. But in any case, one's time is limited in this world. So Ramanuja was lamenting the departure of his dear disciple. At the same time, it was mixed with feelings of joy that his Quraysh had now ascended to those eternal realms. That is where we also will all go one day if we become pure devotees. We don't have to do miracles like Quraysh did. We don't have to have our eyes gouged out like Quraysh's were. But we can learn, we can be inspired. We need not feel hopeless that Quraysh was such a great devotee, Ramanuja was such a great devotee, but I have so many feelings and thoughts in my heart which are not spiritual. How can I ever do that? By the mercy of the great devotees, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna, if we practice what Prabhupada has taught us, surely we can also attain to those realms. Ramanuja was now thinking, even my time is drawing near, and now I must appoint a successor for our movement. And Quraysh's young son, who was a prodigy actually, brilliant man, brilliant young lad actually, he was only a lad at that time. Ramanuja understood that he is going to be my successor. Although there were many older ones, there was even Quraysh. But Quraysh was too saintly, too renounced, too retired from this world to be an active missionary. Whereas his son, Parashar Bhatta, was actually like that. He had missionary zeal. So Ramanuja had appointed him as his successor. He took him to the temple for some last rituals. And after that, the son of another favorite disciple of Ramanuja's, whose name was Dasharathi, and Dasharathi's son, he came to Ramanuja with a special request. He said, after you leave, we will not have any way to remember you and honor you like this. So we would like to have a deity carved out in your likeness. So Ramanuja said, all right. And then the sculptor came, and with Ramanuja in front, he carved out a mold and eventually made a metal deity of Ramanujacharya. And simultaneously, a stone deity was also made. And Ramanuja actually mentioned the actual auspicious timings at which the deities should be installed in Bhutapuri, which was his birthplace. So Ramanuja, of course, was too old to travel to Bhutapuri. He remained in Sri Rangam. Meanwhile, the appointed auspicious day arrived. The two deities, one the fixed deity in stone and the other the movable deity in metal, both were formally installed in Bhutapuri with much devotion and fanfare, according to the rites as enjoined in the scriptures. And just about that time, exactly at that time, Ramanuja suddenly took ill. And he was wondering, what is the reason for my sudden illness? Even though I am old, my health so far has been reasonable. And then he understood, this is exactly the time when my deity is being consecrated there in Bhutapuri. And he understood, this is the Lord's signal to me. The time has come for me to depart. Then he quickly called all his disciples together and he told them that he gave him some parting instructions. He said, there are three kinds of people in this world. One are those who are very favorable to the Lord. The second are those who are very unfavorable to the Lord, who deny the Lord's existence even. And the third are those who are indifferent. As regards the first category of those who are very favorably inclined to the Lord, covet their company like you would covet getting gold or diamonds or fragrant flowers. Never leave their company. Always hanker for their company and be in their company as long as you can and serve them. As far as the second are concerned, avoid them like you would avoid a viper snake. Avoid the company of evil people who deny the existence of God, who perform sinful activities. And as far as the people in the third category are concerned, avoid them like you would the pebbles in the street. Be indifferent to them, but yet, if they are willing to listen, be kind. So to those in the third category, be kind. And if they are willing to listen to the message of the Lord, give it to them. And in this way Ramanuja went on speaking, and then he called all the priests who were serving the deity in the temple of Lord Ranganath. As soon as they all assembled, he prostrated himself in front of them. And he said, I must have offended many of you in the course of my making rules and regulations for the smooth functioning of this temple. I beg you to please forgive all my offenses that I may have committed against you. The priests and the others were so touched, they all began crying. They understood that Ramanuja was soon to depart. With a heavy heart, some of them started crying. And they said, no, if you are going to leave, then we will all commit suicide. And we will all leave our services. We don't want Lord Ranganath without you. And then Ramanuja became very grave. And he said, I may depart, but that will not change anything. Lord Ranganath will remain here. Your service to him should never stop. You must promise me that you will never give up your services to the Lord. Till the end of your life, you must continue serving the Lord very faithfully and sincerely. Remember all that I have taught you in these years and follow these very strictly. And never think of giving up your life prematurely. Because he was thinking about Quresh, perhaps. Remember that for ordinary people, Death comes according to the laws of karma. It will come of its own accord. And for those who are devotees of the Lord, it comes by Lord Krishna's will. Either way, we should not interfere, either with the laws of karma or with Lord Krishna's will. So just continue serving the Supreme Lord with your heart and soul, and await the time when the end will come. Then you will also have a glorious departure. So Ramanuja instructed them and gave them many, many good teachings even at that time. He mentioned to them all these things, and then one disciple spoke up, "What you have taught is very difficult for us now to accept, to understand whatever you have spoken now. Please tell us something in a very simple way." Then Ramanuja gave them his parting final instructions. He says, if you can't read my comment, first prior read the commentary that I have written on the Vedanta. If you can't read that, then study the works of the great alvars, the great devotees, which are very devotional compositions. If you can't do that, then stay in the holy places where the alvars have stayed and where the different deities of the Lord reside. If you can't do that, at least serve the devotees. Go and live with the devotees and serve them always. If you can't do that, at least build a hut, stay and chant the holy names. In this way, Ramanuja gave them some very simple instructions to follow. And then the time had come. He lay down, and in his room, in the privacy of his room, hundreds and thousands of devotees, disciples and others had gathered. They were waiting outside with bated breath. Those who could gather were there in Ramanuja's room. He lay with his head on the lap of one disciple, with his feet on the thighs of another disciple, and he instructed his devotees to chant the holy names and to chant various mantras from the scriptures. Before he had departed, when he was instructing his disciples, he had actually divided the entire congregation into groups. And he said to one disciple, "You will take care of this group." And to another he said, "You will take care of this group." In this way he ensured that the entire community of devotees would now be taken care of very nicely. And then as he was about to depart, all the devotees had assembled. Everyone knew that what they were about to witness was a historic moment. They didn't want to witness it naturally, but they were waiting with bated breaths, chanting the holy names. And then finally, at a chosen moment, Ramanujacharya departed from this world. The soul exited through the Brahmarandhra, which is a small, very, very tiny hole in the top of the skull. It's somewhere where the pineal gland is located, for those of you who are medically inclined. And it is said for those who are yogis, who are great devotees of the Lord, the soul leaves the body from the upper aperture, from this topmost aperture. In general, according to the laws of karma, those who are very sinful, their soul has to leave the body from one of the lower apertures of the body. For those who are pious, the soul leaves through one of the upper apertures of the body. The mouth, the ears, the nose, the eyes, like that. And for those who are great devotees, who are yogis, they depart through the Brahmarandhra. So Ramanuja's soul departed, and at that time there was an uproarious tumult of his devotees crying. They all collapsed to the ground, and they were wailing loudly, and they couldn't compose themselves anymore. Finally, after a long time, everything subsided. Then they couldn't continue that because the last rites had to be performed. And according to the scriptural injunctions, and as Ramanujacharya had desired, he was placed in samadhi. because a sannyasi is not cremated. In the Vedic culture, a body is not buried. A dead body is always cremated unless it's a small child. Then a small child may be buried and there are other exceptional situations. But in general, when a person in the Vedic culture dies, then his or her body is consigned to the flames. And there are many reasons for this. One of the reasons being that it ensures that the connection of the soul with the body is cut for good. Because the body has been a residence for the soul for many years. And the soul doesn't like to leave its home. Inasmuch as if someone comes to push us out of our home, we wouldn't leave so easily. So the body is the home of the soul. So the soul is attached to the body, even if it's an old body. Even if your house is very old, you're still attached to it. And so, if the body is buried, the soul continues to hover around for a long time. But when the body is burnt, then the soul's connection is cut for good. And it can move on to other destinations. Still, the soul hovers around for some time till it acquires a certain subtle body that is suitable for its further destinations. But this is not the right time to talk about these things, because it's almost sunset time, past sunset perhaps. In any case, this is the norm for the average person. But for sannyasis, because the body is already purified, his connection with the body is already cut. He is simply residing there as a matter of convenience. But when the time comes to leave his body is already holy. Another purpose of cremating with fire is to purify the body. But a pure devotee's body is already pure. Another reason why you don't need to burn it. And because this body is sacred and pure, it is placed in samadhi, in a seating posture and a cross-legged posture. That is how Srila Prabhupada was also placed in samadhi. And when we talk of glorious departure, certainly one of these sessions, not this time but on a future visit, we will continue this series actually. Because in 3 lectures you can talk of departures of only a few people. But there's so many more departures to talk about, so perhaps we could continue it in future months. So Srila Prabhupada was also placed in a samadhi like that. So Ramanujacharya was placed there, and with great sorrow in their hearts, the devotees continued. But Ramanuja had already appointed the successor. He had already appointed a trainer or a set of trainers for the young lad who would groom him to take on the responsibilities, the very difficult service of being the Acharya of the whole monastery and the whole faith of the Sri Vaishnavas. Thus did the great Ramanujacharya gloriously depart from this world. So we can get tremendous inspiration. We shouldn't feel depressed that I'm not like that, how can I depart? Rather, we should use these examples to inspire us to go further ahead in a path of devotion. That's why the Lord brings into this world great souls like this, so that we have examples in front of us. If there are no examples, we wouldn't know how to prepare ourselves to leave this world. So that is the purpose actually of this series of lectures. So thank you very much for your kind attention. In 2 or 3 minutes we will have the Arati, but before that we have enough time, just enough time perhaps for one question. If anybody has any question, please feel free to ask.